you saw Stephen Smith give his very short introduction to environmental economics and what it's all about. I don't disagree with anything he said there. I do want to say that he overemphasizes environmental policy design at the expense of what is the environment worth and what should the intensity of environmental policy be. He also gave the impression that environmental economics and environmental problems are synonymous to climate change. Climate change is the only environmental problem there is. And that, I think, is just wrong. Climate change is a major environmental problem. There's other things going on in the atmosphere as well. One of the good things is that the hole in the ozone layer is now gradually closing, and the causes of that have now been taken away. So we don't need to worry about that anymore. And ozone policy, or ozone hole policy, I should say, is now very much something of history to learn from, essentially a success story of environmental policy. Other problems related to the atmosphere have not gone away. Acid rain has gone away in North America and in Europe, by and large. There's still a little bit left, but it's gradually disappearing. But it's very much a big issue in Africa and South Asia and East Asia and in Latin America. The current pandemic reminded a lot of people just how dirty the air is, with the traffic gone and a lot of industry stopped. All of a sudden you could see the sky again in major cities, and that just reminds us how dirty the air still is in a lot of places. And of course the sort of air pollution that we're used to in Europe has nothing on the air pollution that you would see in East and South Asia. But there's more to the environment than the air, and there's water as well. One of the eye-catching environmental issues in the US was this particular river catching fire. That's not something that rivers are supposed to do. Now, rivers in Europe and North America don't catch fire anymore, but these things still happen, or similar things still happen in China and occasionally in Africa. So the very toxic water pollution is still around. Another problem that hasn't gone away is eutrophication or hypoxia, where essentially farmers use too much fertilizer. The excess fertilizer is not taken up by their crops, but instead washes into surface waters, and essentially they are taken over by algae. And what you see here is an example of eutrophic lake. Now, part of this has been solved by taking the nitrates and the phosphates out of our detergents, out of the stuff that we use to wash our clothes, but they have been replaced by so-called pseudo hormones, and they create problems of themselves. They don't cause eutrophication, but they create problems in and of themselves. And that is what you see here. These are frogs, and these things here, they are penises. And there's two things wrong with that. One, the penis is way too large relative to the body, and second, these are female frogs. And the reason for this, we think, are the pseudo hormones that we are dumping in surface water. We're dumping other stuff in water as well. We put animals very close together on farms. One way to keep those animals healthy, to stop the spread of infectious disease, is to, before they get ill, give them lots of antibiotics. That is innocent to the cows and the chicken and so on and so forth, because essentially if they don't need the antibiotics, then they just pee them out. The problem is that those antibiotics then get into the soil and into the water, and antibiotics are of course designed to have an effect on living organisms, and God knows what they are doing to the fish and other animals in the water. And there's lots of issues with that. Some of it we understand, and some of it we only barely are beginning to understand. uh, Recently, there's been a lot of attention to the plastics in the ocean. Essentially, we use lots of plastic. Plastics are good for all sorts of things, but they don't quite break down as quickly as they should. They end up in rivers, they end up in the sea, and that is causing lots of problems there. There's issues on how to manage nature. Here we're looking at the badger. That is, of course, a wonderful animal, but also spreads tuberculosis to cows. So it's wonderful and dangerous at the same time. So you immediately have a trade-off what you're going to do. And returning to the problem of air pollution, what you're looking at here is a map of particulate matter in the air, which causes disease, but it also appears to lead to all sorts of other problems, including cognitive problems. So there's all sorts of issues with the environment beyond climate change, and we should definitely not forget about that. And in this particular course, I will actually talk mostly about other environmental problems than climate change. Climate change comes next term.